Welcome back to Bullpen Sessions. I'm excited today to have Chris Hamilton join me. If you have been on LinkedIn for any period of time and do not know who Chris Hamilton is, I'm pretty sure you are not looking at LinkedIn. This man is everywhere. He is the employee benefits practice leader of Hotchkiss Insurance in Fort Worth, Texas. And I was excited to have him on the episode because we get to know Chris in a way that you may have not seen him before. We don't actually spend a whole lot of time talking about health insurance. I wanted to get inside the man that everybody knows today, what makes him tick, his drive, his discipline, his passions, his hobbies. So get ready. You're going to love this episode. Chris Hamilton is a man on a mission in the health insurance industry. He's got an amazing story, and you're going to hear it today on this episode. Hey, welcome to the Bullpen Sessions podcast, a podcast for driven insurance professionals who are looking to reach their full potential in their insurance careers. This is the place where we help motivated insurance professionals build the right mindset and tools to create more credibility with their target prospects. I'm your host, Andy Neary, former professional athlete turned insurance advisor. Each week, you will learn tips and strategies to help you execute a clear prospecting game plan every single week. Clarity creates action. When you're clear, you're confident. When you're confident, you're consistent. When you're consistent, you are unstoppable. All right. Let's dive into today's episode. Chris Hamilton, man, welcome to Bullpen Sessions. It's good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, people are probably like, wasn't that dude already on Bullpen Sessions? No, that was the broker's voice that I used to run. And when I had you on the broker's voice, I think we focused a lot of content around social media and what you're doing on LinkedIn, because everybody sees what you're doing on LinkedIn now. But what I want to use this episode for is just to get behind the man everybody knows, the myth, the legend. So let's start with, a lot of people see you out on LinkedIn right now, see what you're doing, they're impressed. But before we all knew that, Chris Hamilton, what got you into the insurance business in the first place?
Good question. So my background's in corporate finance and banking, and I had a client that was a brokerage, and they were going around the country buying up other agencies. And so I saw how the brokers made money, and I just got really interested in it when the ACA was passed because I knew it was going to affect a lot of the clients I did business with. It was going to affect their business. There was a time when the broader market thought that the Affordable Care Act was going to put health brokerages out of business. It was going to really impact the business. And just hearing their viewpoints on this is actually going to be a boon to our business is one of the best things that could happen. And if you think about it, right, it requires companies to not only now they have to buy something legally, they have to buy a certain amount of it. There's limits on the coverage. Prior, now you have to provide unlimited coverage. And so all these dynamics are going to force people to buy it, and it was going to go up. But really the way they made money, it was the thing that was really interesting to me, seeing how they made money on the bonuses and how it drove their decisions. And so when I say bonuses from carriers. And what I realized really quickly is that the brokerage industry just at large works for the carriers, not the clients. And when I noticed that, I started asking all of my business clients as a banker, how do you guys deal with this health insurance deal? And the answers that I got were almost consistently the same, which was, you can't really do anything about it. Costs continue to rise. It's just whatever the broker and the carrier tell us our costs are going to be. We just budget an increase every single year, which was baffling to me because I had some really sophisticated clients that had really good ways of managing other costs in their businesses. And they could tell me what input costs for their manufacturing were going to be 2 or 3 years out because they had a way to manage that cost. And it was critical to their business, but they didn't have a way to manage health insurance. And that just led me down this research path. And I just had decided there was a way that you really could affect the cost of health insurance. I saw that the market really wasn't doing that, and it was an opportunity for me to do something, create value for businesses. But what I realized in that process, I'm not only creating value for businesses, I'm creating value for people inside of those businesses. Because if you think about health insurance and health care, it's one of the most expensive things people buy every single day. It's more expensive than most people's car payments or house payments. And in some cases, which is the weirdest thing, we buy insurance to protect us from catastrophe, but it's one of those things, if you look at medical debt and bankruptcy, it's one of the leading causes of bankruptcy in America. And most of the people that file bankruptcy have medical bills, and most of those people had health insurance. It's like, this isn't working.
Yeah.
It's just completely broken across the system. So I saw that as an opportunity to make change.
Well, you bring up a good point. I was just having a conversation with somebody recently about what's going on in the real estate business with all these readjustments of broker comp, because housing has increased so much over time. They're starting to reset real estate broker commissions, because they're like, when the average house price used to be $200,000, now it's $450,000, yet real estate brokers are making the same percentage. That's a lot of money they're making. And it's interesting how our industry really hasn't adjusted commissions all that much, even though premiums have skyrocketed over the last 10 to 12 years.
Yeah, not only have premiums skyrocketed, but the way brokers can make money has skyrocketed. So took over a client, got to pick up a new client this year. When I started digging through how that broker was getting paid, they were making commission on stop loss, charging a fee to the client. They were making money on admin. They had prescription fees that were built in. There were other vendors that were part of the health plan that they were taking $1 here or $2 there. And the commissions that we're making on some of the other policies were higher than industry average. And yeah, those things were disclosed to the client. The client didn't know any different. They didn't have a way to benchmark it. But there were other fees and comp that weren't disclosed, which that's a little bit more troubling.
Yeah. So let's get away from selling insurance for a second. One thing I think I've watched you do that I am so impressed with is when I met you the first time, 3 or 4 years ago, just the drive and the discipline you had. And it's such a cliche question, what makes you tick? But talk to us a little bit about, your level of consistency, especially what people see with social media, is very impressive. But when you look at your day, what are some habits and rituals you deploy every day to make sure you're showing up at your best?
So I try to follow a nutrition plan. I stick to that. I work out every day, 7 days a week. Very rarely. I would think in the last month there's maybe one day. And so some people might think that's not a healthy habit because it might be too much. I adjust the volumes as needed, but I want to make sure because I'm going to show up. I'm going to hold myself accountable to that. And I think that's important. And there's some rituals that I have in the morning, whether you're talking about cold plunging and that sort of thing. People kind of laugh sometimes about that. I don't do it because it's like part of the grind culture. I do it, I think, because it helps reset my nervous system and it helps.
Do you have a plunge at home?
I do, yeah.
What kind?
It's not a fancy one. It's just one I bought on Amazon. And I throw ice in it, ice bottles. So
okay.
I'm actually thinking about buying, because it's important enough to me now. In the wintertime, it was easy to keep it cold because it's cold at night. The water stays cold, right? Yeah. But now that we're moving into the summer, I'm going to need something a little bit more robust. So, but that's something that I really took on this last year. And so, those are some of the basic habits that I have just to make myself feel better. And I'm not a professional athlete, right? But this is what I try to tell my teammates and people on my team is that we don't get paid to shoot a jump shot. We don't get paid to hit a baseball or throw a football. But make no mistake, you're a professional at what we do. And if you think about the sports teams, they have trainers and nutritionists and therapists and all those sorts of things. They even have psychologists now. Because it's not just a mental game, it's a physical game. And people will say, well, you sell insurance for a living. You work out of an office. It's not physical. You are totally mistaken there. Because if you could take somebody that's in shape, works out every day, has high energy, and put them against somebody that is overweight, doesn't have a good diet, it doesn't have high endurance, and you put them through a gauntlet of stress and then ask them to go make a pitch, which one do you think is going to show up better?
Exactly.
And when we are in high pressure, high intensity, fast paced life, and people don't realize the grind that puts on your nervous system, on your ability to think on your feet, the better you feel, the more energy you have, the higher capacity you're going to be and the better mindset you're going to have when you're going into a big meeting.
I remember years ago, somebody asked me, Andy, why is it that there's so many athletes in the insurance industry and why do most athletes do really well? And my answer was because they know how to put in the work off the field when no one's watching. And I think that's what you're getting at is you can't just show up and sell insurance. It's what are you doing to put your mind and your body in a position off the field to make sure you're showing up every day. Diet, exercise is all part of it. And I saw a meme the other day speaking to what you said, and it said if you want to become a billionaire today, you need to plunge, and sauna. Because it's starting to becoming mocked now, because all you see is these influencers out there, these millionaires and billionaires. Oh, you got to plunge and you got to sauna. And I love both of them, but it is funny how everybody feels like that's what it takes now to be successful. Just cold plunge and just sauna, and you're going to make it.
Yeah, there's a benefit to doing those things because I think it helps. For me, it gives, if I plunge, and I notice this when I don't plunge, if I plunge in the morning, I feel like my nervous system is 100%. Reset at least for 8 hours. I'm a lot calmer. It helps me in that regard. But the thing I would tell you, I think it's interesting about athletes in particular, is they know how to put in work when people aren't watching. And I think the driver behind that is their competitiveness. Yeah. People who are competitive are going to be drawn to sports. They're going to become athletes. And I am highly competitive. It drives my wife crazy. I will compete on everything. And my biggest competitor, this sounds cliche, but I'm going to be honest with you. My biggest competitor is myself. And people will say, like, well, you compete with Andy or you compete with whoever, right? Whatever sense. You could say we compete on social media or we compete against another broker across town. I'm not competing against anybody. I'm competing against myself, because that's the person that matters most, like what's happening right here inside of my head. And I know, did I do my best or did I not? And if I didn't do my best, I'm probably going to kick my own butt a little bit in my head. And I know myself if I competed that day or not.
I agree. I think it can be seen as cliche to be, just be better than who you were yesterday, right? But another good way of looking at it is, will the version of you 10 years from now be happy with the actions you're taking today? Will the older version of you be happy with what you're doing today? And if the answer is yes, you're probably doing the right things, right? Yeah. And I think that I totally agree with that. I think as an athlete, I just got done reading one of Nick Saban's books, leadership book, and one of the things his former players talked about in the book consistently was how even after they won a national title, 24 hours later, he's like, season's over, guys. Look ahead. Yeah. Remember Jordan? He'd be in the weight room the day after they won the NBA title, right? And I think that's also part of it. It's athletes are really good at making sure the highs are never too high, the lows are never too low, and they're not sitting relishing yesterday's victory. They're always focused on what's next. And you might say that's a bad thing, but I also think that's what makes athletes continue to strive for more. Do you agree with that?
I do. And, I had a similar experience this year. I closed one of the biggest deals I've ever done. And I remember one of my C-level partners in our firm, he looked at me and he said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, things are great." And he's like, I thought you would be more excited to close it. This is like a career achievement account that you close. I just thought you'd be more excited. And I thought to myself, I was like, well, one, it was a grueling process to go through to win the account, and now's when the real work starts. But it's just another day in the office. It's another day right? We're moving forward. Just keep going. And I think you're right. There's something to that, not feeling like you've ever made it. I don't feel like I've made it. And I feel like I'm working towards that. And, a lot of people might look at the size of my book or our team or, the accounts that we have and say, "Oh man, you've made it." But it certainly doesn't feel that way. It feels like I'm still entry level into the business in my own mind.
You said something though. I remember I had Dominic Franchini on the podcast. You were going to meet him had you been able to go to the event in Indiana. And I had him on, and he's had tremendous success in this industry, and he's got a multi-seven-figure book of business. And he said, even after 19 years, I don't feel like I've made it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's it right there.
I think there's a lot of people that don't have that same mindset, because you'll find people who've attained a decent level of success and they're just content and they just coast. And I think the difference between people that do that and the people that don't is how they measure. This may sound wrong. I don't know another way to say it, but how they measure the value of what they do. And to me, it's not how many accounts, it's not how much money, because that stuff doesn't really matter. Once you hit a certain level, you're like, okay, it doesn't really matter if I write another account. You don't need any more accounts. It's the competitive drive. Yeah. How many people can I help?
But I think that's what separates you and others from everybody else. It's your drive, but your mix of drive with remaining humble, right? I can't tell you how many times I've talked to you where I'm like, dude, be more excited, but it's because you're so humble. You're never going to let yourself get too high on your own supply. And I think that's a dangerous slope a lot of people in this industry can go down as they start to have some kind of level of success. And then they become their own biggest fan. And that's a slippery slope.
Well, that's another thing that I think athletics and life and business will teach you. You'll get humbled at some point. The best get humbled. I've been humbled in football. When I played in college, I was humbled a number of times. In work and business, I've been humbled in this industry.
Yeah.
I've had some pretty crazy things happen, and that I wouldn't have expected. And I thought, oh wow, I didn't see that coming. You know what? File that one away.
I'd actually love to know. I want to share a moment I had, but I'd love to know, going back, because you played college football. I'm forgetting the name of the university.
Hardin-Simmons.
Which is a great football program.
It was a good football program, yeah.
Do you have any moments that you can remember, that moment you're like, oh shit, I'm playing college ball now?
So I have two. So Hardin-Simmons is a small school, and I was a good player in high school.
Yep.
And any level that you go to in college I didn't know that though.
D3 football's good, man.
Well, and we were nationally ranked. We made the playoffs every single year. We were usually in the top 10. I went on to campus thinking, this is a small school. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to own this place. Cause like these people, like this isn't Division I, like I'm going to own this. And I remember it might've been the first week we were in pads and we had a scrimmage and we were playing our starting defense and I was running offense. And I remember, I'll never forget this. I don't remember the day, but I remember we were running a screen and I looked out across the defense and I thought that we had a safety. He was like 175 pounds and I was a guard and I was going to pull out an open field in front of the entire team watching this practice. And I thought to myself, I'm going to freaking kill this guy. Everybody's going to know my name. And I turn, pull, the receiver catches the ball, tucks in right behind me, and I'm coming down on this safety and we make eye contact. And I'm thinking, oh, he wants some. Come get it, boy. And I lay into this guy, but he knocked me out cold. He hit me so hard.
I've never been 175 pounds of him.
He hit me harder than anybody had ever hit me in my life. Probably ever before, ever since. I've never been knocked out, but I saw it on film because I don't remember the day. I had a concussion. I went down like a boxer getting knocked out, like a lump of sacked potatoes just on the ground, and I was out. And I'd never been hit that hard before. And in front of everybody on my team, and they're like, everybody says, who's that guy? Not because he did something good, because he got knocked out.
Yeah.
And that's
Welcome
the name.
To college football.
Welcome to, yeah. And I was like, oh, wow, these people can play. Yeah. They were all something. They were all region, all district, all state, wherever they came from.
Hometown heroes, we used to call them. Yep.
Yeah. Oh man. So that was one lesson. Another one was in the conference championship my senior year, and we were playing big rival. And second play of the game, I mean, I just got bull rushed, picked up, sacked the quarterback using me, and in front of everybody. And he got up over me and started yelling at me like all day, whatever. And I was like, oh gosh, I wanted to be like that Homer Simpson meme where he just kind of just disappears into the bushes. And I was like, can I get out of this? What? And this is like the end of my career, right? I'm like, what the heck? And so I just remember my quarterback came over to me and he picked me up and he was kind of a jokester. And he's like, you're not going to let him talk to you like that, are you? And I was like, okay. And so we got in the huddle. And the next play we called a counter, which is, people that don't know, is I'm going to pull to the opposite side of the field. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to get this guy. But then when I look up, I see that he swapped to the opposite side of the defensive line. And I just lit him up. I got him. And I won't say what I said to him. We both exchanged some words that day, or at that exchange, but neither one of us said another word to each other the rest of the day. But that moment, that was the first time I'd ever been in a game. My entire career, I literally in that moment wanted to quit. I mean, it was one of those moments that like shocked me to the core. You can have a moment like that in practice. Okay, it's not that big a deal. You go brush it off, but this just happened in front of my entire team, in front of the entire stadium. Like, what? And Yeah, in that moment, you just kind of have to snap to and be like, all right. And I think that resonates with people because it doesn't matter whether you were in sports, whether you're in life, whether you're dealing with kids, you have that moment where you just kind of like, I've hit it, like I've hit my end of my rope. I'm ready to quit, throw the towel in.
But I think you bring up another good point. You also have to have a short memory, right? If you got your
Yeah.
ass knocked down as an offensive lineman, you got to have a short memory because guess what? 45 seconds later, you got the next play.
Yeah, and that's something I tell my kids all the time. That's something I tell my teammates. The people, our sales team is next play. Our coach, you always used to walk around. He had these sayings, and he was smart because I thought he was crazy, but he would repeat himself all the time. So for 4 years, I heard this man say the same things over and over and over and over every single day. But he would always say, next play. You got to be ready for the next play. That play's gone.
Yeah.
It's the next play. And he was so right because if you're thinking about what just happened, and I think this is what's really important in our industry, or just anybody that's in sales, if you're focused on the call that you just had, the meeting that you had, somebody was rude to you, or it didn't go the way, you fumbled it at the very end, you messed it up, you're too busy thinking about that, even consciously or in your mind, subconsciously even, it's going to affect your ability to think clearly and to communicate in that next interaction that you have. And it's probably one of the most dangerous things to an athlete is to focus on and ruminate on what just happened. You have to have a clear mind.
Understood. Yeah, I can remember my moment. I was playing pro ball. I was in Idaho Falls, and I remember Steve Woodward was the guy batting from the University of Houston. Steve, if you're listening, you don't know you've had this impact on my life. So my go-to was a changeup. That was my pitch. And I loved nothing more than to throw changeups on a full count because I knew if I came with a changeup on a full count, I was going to make you look like a fool. So full count, Steve Woodward, left-handed hitter, Idaho Falls. I'm like, yeah, number 4 hitter. Threw him a full count changeup, and that dude absolutely pissed on it. It went about 450 feet. And I remember it was the first time in my career as a pitcher, Chris, where somebody literally took my pitch on the count I loved throwing it and made me look stupid. And that was my moment. I'm like, yeah, I'm playing a different level of baseball here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have those moments as athletes, and it's the same in business, right? You probably have had that moment as an advisor where you were in the conference room of that one prospect. You're like, holy shit, this is a different league.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've had moments like that where I show up, literally happened. It was a publicly traded company, and the team I met with looked at me and kind of looked down the hallway. They're like, well, where's the rest of your team? I was like, it's just me. They're like, really? When so-and-so, big national broker shows up, they bring like 10 people with them. I was like, I don't need 10 people. You got me.
That's awesome.
And we ended up actually winning that account. It took a long time, but we ended up winning that account.
Hey, quick announcement. If you are an insurance professional looking to optimize the way you prospect and generate leads, and you find yourself intrigued by LinkedIn, but just don't know where to start, I want to talk to you about the Social Media Sales Academy. Listen, the idea of diving into social media and putting yourself out there can be daunting, and the fear of presenting your best self online is real. But let's face it, the traditional methods of prospecting are failing you, and it is time for a change. Who is the Social Media Sales Academy for? If you are a driven insurance professional looking to grow your revenue, but strapped for time, you're looking for a more efficient way to prospect, and you are just watching others have success on the platform, and you want to have the same success, I want to talk to you. Over 6 weeks, you are going to learn directly from me the ins and outs of LinkedIn using our proprietary playbook, the LinkedIn Diamond Playbook. By joining the Academy, you are going to learn how to create a prospect-friendly LinkedIn profile, how to find your ideal prospects and send connection requests that actually get accepted. You're going to learn how to post content that engages and attracts your ideal prospect. You'll learn how to show up on video with confidence. And you're going to learn how to send direct messages that turn connections into sales conversations. If this sounds like something you know you need to do, I want you to go to CompleteGameConsulting.com/academy. That is CompleteGameConsulting.com/academy. You'll jump on a call with us, see if it's a fit for you, and we'll get you enrolled. The next class starts on May 1st. I hope to talk to you soon. Let's get back to I want to hear people. I want people to hear like the guy behind the guy, as they said in the movie. Was that Swingers? Okay, so going back to exercise, I want to ask you a question. You got a half hour.
Okay.
That's all you get. What's your workout? What's your go-to workout? If Chris Hamilton has a half hour to work out, what's he doing to maximize the 30 minutes?
I'm probably going to do circuits of calisthenics. I have a rope in my gym. So I built a gym in my house, and so I've got a high ceiling. I built a climbing rope, like a manila rope. I mean, that works your back, your core, your grip, everything. I'm going to climb that rope. I'm going to do push-ups. I have some parallel bars that I built. So it's just like put push-ups on bars. I have kettlebells. I'm just going to set up a circuit. I'm going to do 3 to 4 exercises just nonstop, back to back, and I'll probably see how many rounds I can get in probably 20 minutes.
Okay.
And then I'm going to finish. I have an air assault bike. It's just a fan bike. It's probably the most torturous machine ever designed. And I'll sit on that and I'll do some sprints, interval sprints on that. And then I'll probably finish with some stretching and whatnot.
My dad just celebrated his 77th birthday. Guy works out every day, good health. And it was funny. I asked him, so you're 77. How does it feel to be 77? He said, just like it did when I was 67. I'm like, well, one, that's a good thing. I said, so what are your views? Any complaints at age 77? That's what it was. He goes, yeah, when I get on the bike at the gym, I just can't sprint on the bike anymore like I used to. And it's an aerosol. I'm like, dude, you're 77. Yeah. If your complaint is you can't sprint like you used to on the bike, you got life pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think the thing people do, they work out and they focus on what they like.
Yeah.
I think it's important to focus on what makes you rounded. So I do a lot of work with balance, slacklining.
I need to get better at that.
Yeah. Oh man. Slacklining, yoga, calisthenics. I've started reincorporating weights. I don't typically like to lift weights.
As a guy, if you are looking at him right now, I would say you're lying because you're freaking jacked.
Well, I think it's like programming from when I played football because I was a lot bigger guy. And the reason I don't like lifting weights is because I bulk up pretty easily. Yeah. And I just don't like being bulky. I used to do a lot of endurance training. So cycling and running and that sort of thing. And I just felt like I had really good cardiovascular shape. But I wasn't as strong, so I started kind of relifting weights. And so I think there's a medium. I want to be just kind of well-rounded and good at everything. So I have good flexibility, strength, endurance. I want to be, I want to live to be 100 at least. That's my goal.
It's kind of my mission right now is longevity.
And I want to mow my yard the day before I die. That's the goal. I think have the ability to mow the yard.
My way of going out is I literally just want to
combust.
Just, it's over. Okay. I think that's going to be the best way to go out. You're healthy up until the moment, and then just
that's for sure. That's longevity, right? Yeah. There's a difference between lifespan, which is just how long you live, and health span, which is how many years of healthy life did you have that you could be active and do what you want, and that's my goal.
What about diet, man? You talked about nutrition. Mm-hmm. Like when you think about the typical week, are there any rules you apply to nutrition or things you try to make sure you do on a daily basis?
Whole foods. Just eat. Okay. Try not to eat anything processed.
You plan your meals at all in the week?
So I used to be very religious. I used to prep all my meals. I used to cook all on a Sunday night, I would cook all the meat and all the veggies and all the carbohydrates and all that sort of stuff. But pretty much what I've tried to do, my wife is gluten intolerant. And so, I gave up bread years ago, gave up, a lot of the starchy carbohydrates. And I try to focus on, I'm not carnivore, I wouldn't say that, but I'm heavily meat-based with a lot of plant-type stuff. So I used to eat a ton of like salads and lots of fibrous veggies. I eat less of those and more meat. I try to focus on protein. It's probably another reason why I've kind of been...
Yeah, when I had my leg infection a couple years ago, I had to go gluten-free and dairy-free because my stomach got destroyed by the antibiotics. And truth be told, today I could probably start eating gluten again. I just choose not to. I know you said your wife's gluten intolerant. Ever since I got rid of gluten, man, I've never felt better. I've never felt more clear. I've never felt more energized. My stomach doesn't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
It was a game changer.
Yeah. If I eat it, I like hamburgers. And so if I eat a hamburger with a bun, I'll notice a difference because a lot of times I'm eating like a lettuce wrap burger or just a plain patty. But every once in a while I'll have a regular burger with a bun and my stomach will hurt. I feel bloated. That sort of thing. And so if I eat bread of sorts, I notice it there.
Yeah.
So
what about looking at your career? You've been in the industry how long now?
10 years.
Who are some people, if you look back over the last 10 years, who are some of the people that have really had an influence on your insurance career?
So I've had a couple of mentors that not in the insurance business, they're outside, external to the business. And they just taught me how to think about business differently. One of them was he was a board of director on one of the banks, and he kind of took me under his wing, and we developed a friendship. And he was a serial business owner, executive at a lot of these some very big companies, and he was also a consultant at Arthur Andersen. And so he had a different way. I always was amazed at how he would look at a problem, and I'm thinking something, and he would ask me questions. Well, what do you think the problem is? And what do you think the solution is? And what do you think is doing this or that? And I would tell him my responses, but he would ask me other questions. And what it taught me was it was almost like he was picking up a prism, and he was turning it and looking at the problem from a different direction. And he taught me how to think critically by asking the right questions. And that's how you find opportunities. That's how I found my opportunity to get into the business that I'm in today. It was because of him. And so he taught me a lot. And I also had another mentor from inside the banking industry that taught me, how to apply the same level of discipline and persistency to my career. Because I felt like there was a time where I was a little bit kind of lost and wandering, and I had success. I mean, I was doing fine by every standard. But she said, you could be okay, and you're going to get by and be fine. But if you do these things and you put this sort of discipline behind what you do, you can be really good at it.
That's awesome, man.
So
yeah, that's really cool. I think that's one of the things about this industry is I see a lot of people get in, they're excited, right? The sky's the limit, and then they don't have a mentor, they don't have anybody coaching them, and within a few years they're out on an island trying to figure it out on their own, and that's where they struggle. I know it's one reason I almost got out 13, 14 years ago, because I had nobody training me, nobody coaching me, and I was like, dude, I'm done with this thing. Like it became a grind.
I think the other important thing that I have found, and I think that a lot of athletes will find this, is the game within the game. I think that's important. So people
Describe that a little bit.
So sometimes, I'll give you a funny example. One of the things that I do, and this isn't going to drive your business forward. This is going to make your business fun. But I have a game that I play. It's called Life in Song. And so when I go meet with somebody, if we walk into a prospect's office or a client's office, everybody on my team knows we play this game. And so if any of my clients see this, they're going to know what we do now. Some of my clients know and they play along because I've let them in on the secret. But I walk into a meeting, and my goal in that meeting is to see how many song lyrics or song titles I can drop into conversation without anybody knowing it. Our CEO's even gotten into it. In fact, he's got the best song title drop of all time.
I was going to say, give me an example.
In one of our biggest client meetings ever, we're pitching to win the business, and he drops a song lyric. He says, we're talking with the COO, the CFO of this big company, and we're talking about TPAs and PBMs and all these things. And the COO looks and he says, this is like a game of alphabet soup. And our CEO looks at him and he says, I know, it's like Susu Studio, right? and it's just like, it was the best drop. And I thought, wow. If
Even the CEO is in on this game, huh?
Yeah, so that's actually awesome. One of our fundamentals of our company is to make it fun, keep it fun.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
So, we try to live by that. But that's a game within a game. But another game within the game would be, if you think about what we do for a living, it's like, okay, I want to go sell insurance. I want to get a new client. Well, okay, that's a great milestone, right? But what about how many calls can you make today? Or how many pieces of content can you create today? Or whatever it is, try to set something you can win at today.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. That's also a game within a game.
That's great advice. What about podcasts, books? What are you reading right now? What are you listening to?
So I'm reading Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. I've never read that book. I've read a couple of Gladwell's books, but it's actually really interesting. It's relevant to what we do because I believe we're on the tip of a movement, and we're at the tipping point of a movement. And so that's why that book resonates with me. I just finished a book called Reluctant Warrior. It's a Marine officer's autobiography of one of his tours in Vietnam. So I'm a big reader of military history, and I like first-person accounts. And so, and then there's another book that I'm reading called Moments, Making Moments That Matter. It's like how to create memories, and whether it's with your kids or whether it's at work. And so there's all these moments that we live every day that we just forget about. But how to make a more memorable life is kind of what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's easy to get so caught up in what we do for a living that you forget to be where your feet are and forget to enjoy the moment and create that moment. I know I've been guilty of that myself. Man, you're on fire right now. You know, it's funny. I told you offline, whenever we work with somebody and I'm teaching them how to use LinkedIn or social media, I always put your LinkedIn profile up and I'm like, this is your North Star, guys. This is your guy. You go follow what he's doing and model what he's doing. But I think it's one reason you've been so successful, Chris, is you come at social media with one goal. You know who you're trying to speak to, and then you put your blinders on. Yeah. You're not trying to be popular. You're just, I'm here to talk to my C-suite executives that I'm drawing attention from. So with that being said, I'm curious. I got two more questions for you. Number one, looking back over your 10-year career, you've had a lot of success in this industry. What are you most proud of?
I'm proud of the work that we're doing today, genuinely, because when I started doing the kind of work that we're doing, I'll never forget when I first started talking about self-funding smaller groups, mid-sized employers, and bringing cost containment strategies to help them manage the cost of their health insurance. People laughed at me. This is like 2013, 2014. I had this idea. I went to my friends that were in the business, had been in the business for a very long time, super successful people. By every measure, they were the most successful people in the industry. And I said to them, this is what I want to do. I think we can make an impact. And they thought, that's going to be really hard to do. I don't think you should do that. And then the service teams that were part of that, they would mock me. Oh, there's Chris Hamilton. He's gonna fix healthcare. And you know what? It actually motivated me. It pushed me harder to want to do it. And our business today is built around it. And we lead with that. That's what employers want. That's what my ideal client is, somebody that's fed up with the cost of insurance, and they're fed up with the cost that their employees have to pay for healthcare when they get it, and they want to do something different. Guess what? There's a solution for that. And I'm not the one that invented it either. I'm just the one that figured out how to package it and bring it to an employer. There's companies that have been doing this. They've written books about this before the ACA was even passed. This isn't new. But the problems in our industry, people aren't incentivized to show you the solution because it costs them time, it costs them money, and they're paid by their master, which is the carrier. And we don't do business that way. I don't take money from those carriers. I don't take a dime from those carriers. They can keep that money. I work for my clients.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. And I actually have a benefit because I got into the business late. I got into the business late.
You came without the bad habits.
If I had a huge block of business with a Blue Cross or United Healthcare, we have business with all those carriers. But if I had a massive block and they were paying me a 7 or 8 figure bonus, they're paying me $15 million to keep the carrier is the master. The clients need to know that. They come to the broker and it's like, hey, you need to keep this business with me if you want this multi-million-dollar bonus. You start doing what these other people are doing, you're going to lose your clients with us, and we're not going to pay you that bonus. You're hamstrung. It's a golden handcuff to those brokers. And it's almost it's the Achilles heel. And I've not read the entire book, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, but there's a section in the book that I read. I thumbed through it because it's just full of wisdom that stood the test of time. But there's a segment in there that he talks about never attack your enemy's weakness, or never attack your enemy's strength with your weakness. I'm not the biggest brokerage in the world. I'm not. But he also says attack your enemy's weakness with your strength. And my strength is that I'm not beholden to a carrier. It allows me to create these other customized programs that look very similar but deliver so much more. I'm not worried about getting bonuses. I don't look to meet the earnings guidance for the next quarter or the next year. I look at lifetime value of a client. If I solve their biggest issue, I keep the client for a decade versus the industry average of 3 to 5 years. And so I'm building a business based on that. And I think it gives me a competitive advantage.
Well, you also brought up another little nugget, I think, is what helps athletes thrive as the way they do, is that chip on their shoulder. When you had your people mocking you back in 2014, oh, Chris, trying to fix healthcare. You're like, yeah, watch, I'm going to do it. I remember early when I started Complete Game Consulting, I had a guy that I viewed as a peer and as a friend tell people I was a gimmick and I wouldn't be around very long. And I remember I was like, oh yeah, watch.
I knew.
Just watch.
I knew when you started, but this is the thing about ideal clients. Ideal clients get what you do. Ideal clients recognize when they see the value, And I saw it when you were starting, and I knew you probably remember this. Me telling you, you're gonna do something big.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I knew it when we started working together, and I was like, this guy's onto something.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And so,
well, last question, man. I know you got to get rolling here. A lot of our viewers are younger advisors in the industry, probably 2-3 years. They don't have the mentor. They don't have the coach. You know, a lot of the mentors you and I were fortunate to have. What advice would you give that young producer right now who maybe just got in the industry, just starting out? He or she is, you know, maybe they're struggling a little bit. They're trying to make their way, open some doors. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give them?
I got 3 pieces of advice, actually. The first one is to figure out what value you bring. A lot of times people think, well, I sell insurance. We don't sell insurance. We're solving somebody's problem. Figure out the problem that you solve and figure out the value of that problem to your ideal client. The second thing I would say is persistency, determination, and drive. There are going to be days that you don't want to do it. I'll give you a perfect example of something I saw this last week, and it was with kids, but I'm in a story or analogy guy that really resonates with me. My son plays select baseball. We were in a contentious game, and one of the kids was leading off a little too far on first base, and the pitcher tried to pick him off at first, and the kid decided to go to second. And they caught this kid in a rundown. But you know, you've played enough baseball. Usually somebody will get caught in a rundown. They'll go to second, go back to first, go to second. They'll do it 2 to 3 times.
Well, we used to run the rundowns in practice, and you could never let it go past 4 throws.
So usually the kid, and I see this happen all the time, a kid will go to second, see the guy's got the ball, go back to first, and by the time it's thrown back to second, he just gives up. This kid, he was not going to be stopped. He did the rundown back and forth, and it went like 7 or 8 throws. But what I love about this is this kid knew if I hang in long enough, they are going to make a mistake. They're going to make a mistake, and it's exactly what happened. They threw the ball back, and it was the outfielder that had finally come in. And as he was coming in to catch at second base, he dropped the ball. It hit the tip of his glove and rolled into the outfield. Well, guess what? Nobody was in the outfield because he was infield now. Kid was able to run second, third, and come home. And when he hit home, he about collapsed. He's like just so tired because he just sprinted back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And oh my gosh, I wanted to rip my shirt off and scream, ah! And I started yelling. I think my wife was like, sit down, you're embarrassing me. But I was like, you can't coach that. You cannot coach that.
Yep.
A kid that has that level of determination, an advisor that has that level of determination, a business owner that has that level of determination, you're never going to beat that kid.
Yep.
You may have caught him in that rundown, but that kid wanted to win, and he was going to do everything he possibly could to win in that situation. Now, he may not have won in that particular battle, but do that 10 times.
And you may beat me today, you won't beat me tomorrow.
But how do you measure the game? Is the game measured in that one engagement, or is that game measured over 9 innings?
Yep.
Is it measured over a series? Is it measured over a season? How do you measure the game? That kid's not going to get beat. The kid's not going to get beat. And the same thing
it's
with
the old phrase of you won the battle, but you're not going to win the war.
That's right. So I would tell advisors, you figure out how to steal your mentality to where you might get caught in a rundown, the proverbial rundown in the boardroom or whatever. You might get tagged, but you're going to have the persistency and the determination that you're not giving up. You cannot. The third piece of advice I would give is be willing to iterate. You're going to try something, it may not work. It doesn't mean it's a failure. It means adjust. And don't judge it based on one experience with it. Try new things. Iterate with it, figure out what works for you, and then run with it. And then when that stops working for you, try something new. The definition of an insanity is doing the exact same thing, expecting a different result. And people continue to do that today, and they're told, well, this is the way business is done. Challenge that. What worked for those people may not work for you. What I do today won't work for other people, and what worked for those people may not work for me. I figured out what works for me, and that's why I do what I do. So I would just tell people again, just to kind of, sum that up, is like be willing to iterate, have some determination, play the long game,
and be persistent.
Keep
going when everybody else gives up. So,
yeah.
Well, Chris, it's been an honor, man. Like I said, watching you from afar and what you're doing today. I know there's a lot of people. There's not a person I work with that I say, Chris Hamilton. They say absolutely, because the presence you've built on a platform like LinkedIn has been impressive. But I think what's even more impressive is how you show up. You don't brag. You're not cocky. You're a humble guy who's just getting up and getting after it every day. So you are a model for a lot of people. So Thank you for being on the show, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Andy.
Awesome. That's all we got for today's episode of the Bullpen Sessions podcast. One thing that would really help us both and other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment in iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you tune in to listen to the show. Also, make sure to link up with us at CompleteGameConsulting.com on social media. And please share this podcast with anyone who you think might enjoy it. Until next time, remember, clarity creates confidence. Confidence creates consistency. Consistency makes you unstoppable.